Okay, so let's get started with our new podcast using Garageband. So to get started, let's open up Garageband. And what you see here is a list of all your existing recordings if you have any. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. So click on New Project, and for our purposes, we're going to go to Podcast. So click on Podcast and click on Choose. And here you can put in the name of your song. So we're going to call this Demo Podcast. Hit Create. I already have one, so I'm going to replace it. And what GarageBand does now is it gives you a pre-formatted selection of tracks for your podcast. So for those of you who are not familiar with recording audio, maybe you're not a musician or you haven't done any recording before, typically professional recordings are done in what's called tracks. You may have heard of a 4 or an 8 or a 16 track recorder. Think of it like a band where you might have the drummer on 1 or 2 tracks, the female voice on one track, a male singer on another track, a guitar, a bass guitar, the keyboards. They all have their individual tracks. And what that does is it allows the production engineer, or the person who's doing the final editing of the audio, to control the individual instruments for a band, and so they go on individual tracks. Now, obviously, we're doing a podcast, so it's a little bit different, but still, GarageBand gives us individual tracks to work with so that we too can have a better level of control over our audio. So, let's see what GarageBand gave us. First of all, they gave us a podcast track, which is nothing more than a place to put some artwork. If you've ever been on iTunes or any of the popular podcasting networks, there's usually an album cover artwork that's associated with a podcast. And so this is a place where you would put that, and I'll show you that a little bit later. The second track they gave us is optimized for male voice, and this just means that there are some equalizer settings that GarageBand has preset that's optimized for a male voice. They've given us another track that's optimized for a female voice, and another one that's optimized for a jingle or a little song or some music that you can put to your podcast if you want, which is a lot of fun and very popular. So these 4 tracks can be deleted. You can add more tracks. You can change the equalizer settings on these tracks. And I'll get into that as we go through the process of creating our first podcast episode.